So how much do you actually know about history? You might think you're pretty knowledgeable about it, but we bet there's still a lot of things you don't know. There are so many bizarre events that have been long forgotten. With that said, here are 5 crazy history facts that you probably never knew you didn't know. But first, be sure to hit that like button for more videos. Number 5. The Great Emu War. Have you ever heard of the Great Emu War? Probably not. It wasn't exactly taught in history class. This insane event happened back in 1932 in Australia, where an army of emus attacked a group of soldiers. They were running around the countryside destroying crops. So the Australian military decided to fight back against the birds. Yes, birds. This was not your typical war. Soldiers marched into the fields carrying Lewis guns to defend themselves against their feathery foes. And those birds were no joke. The emus were able to evade them, even though they were shot at. And the bullets just seemed to make them angrier. Even the military admitted that the emus were fighting back, saying that they were heavily armed and were attacking the soldiers. They continued to march around the fields, taking out crops everywhere they went. The two groups kept facing off for several weeks until the soldiers were eventually sent home and the emus won the war. It was one of the strangest wars in history, that's for sure. Number 4. Napoleon was attacked by bunnies. If you've ever seen Walt Disney's version of Napoleon and the rabbits, then you'll know that the story is basically true. One day, Napoleon organized a rabbit hunt, and he came well prepared. He assembled a huge force of soldiers, all tasked with capturing the pesky animals. However, the rabbits had other plans, and they ended up fighting back. They swarmed Napoleon and his soldiers, overwhelming them completely. Needless to say, he didn't catch any rabbits that day. In fact, he barely got away himself. Although the story might sound comical, if you imagine a huge group of rabbits swarming and biting Napoleon, the idea is actually quite terrifying. After all, rabbits usually come in packs, and they can definitely be aggressive if they feel threatened. It's unlikely that this attack would have killed Napoleon or anything like that, but it certainly would have been painful. Number 3. The shortest war in history. How long do you think World War II lasted? What about the American Revolutionary War? If you said longer than 3 minutes, then you'd be wrong. The shortest war in history was the Anglo-Zanzibar War, which took place on August 27, 1896. It was fought between Britain and the Zanzibar Sultanate in Tanzania, and it officially lasted for 38 minutes. That's right, just under half an hour. It's believed that the reason the war was so short was because the British Navy had such an advantage over the Zanzibari fleet. As soon as the British ships started firing upon the Sultan's palace, the enemy forces began to retreat. The war ended as quickly as it started, with the Sultan surrendering after only 38 minutes. To this day, it remains the shortest war in recorded history. Imagine going to battle and coming home before you even had time to get hungry. Number 2. Cleopatra. Most people know that the ancient Egyptians lived thousands of years ago. However, how exactly far back you might not know. Cleopatra, who was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, died in 30 BC. She is often remembered as one of the most beautiful women in history, and her story has been told and retold countless times. We've all heard of her famous love affair with Roman general Mark Antony and how the two of them ruled Egypt together. But what a lot of people don't realize is how close she is to us in terms of time. When Cleopatra died, the Great Pyramid of Giza had already stood for over 2,000 years. It was built around 2580 BC by the 4th dynasty pharaoh Khufu. That means Cleopatra lived closer to the moon landing in 1969 than she did to when the pyramid was constructed. Considering this fact makes you realize just how recent human history really is. There's a common misconception that the ancient world is extremely far back, but in reality, it's not as distant as you might think. 1. The Dancing Plague. In July of 1518, something strange happened in Strasbourg, France. A woman was dancing in the street, and nobody knew why. At first, it was kind of amusing to watch her dance, but within days, she hadn't stopped moving and she was exhausted. People thought that maybe she had some sort of mental illness, but that didn't explain why she wouldn't stop dancing. As the days passed, more and more people began dancing along with her, and it became a full-blown epidemic. Within weeks, hundreds of people were dancing nonstop. This continued for months, and eventually, people started dying from exhaustion, heart attacks, and strokes. Nobody could figure out what was causing this strange behavior, and it wasn't until recently that historians came up with a few potential explanations. Some believe that it was a form of mass hysteria, while others believe that it was caused by a type of rye bread that was contaminated with ergot, a fungus that can cause hallucinations and convulsions. Whatever the cause may have been, the dancing plague was one of the strangest events in history. Those poor people probably thought that they were going crazy when they couldn't stop dancing. Imagine trying to go about your day and being unable to sit down or sleep. It must have been terrifying. Fortunately, nothing like this has happened in modern history. But if it did, we'd probably blame it on too much dancing at a One Direction concert. Well, there you have it, guys. Which fact about history shocked you the most? Did you know any of these already? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button for more videos.